Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark, and on this episode, we are taking you to the land of Oz. I've watched Wicked, the movie, at least 5 times since it came out, 3 times in theaters, and like so many of you, I am so eager for part 2. We just fell in love with the story and fell in love with the music. And before Wicked was a movie, it was one of the most successful musicals of all time, which debuted on Broadway back in 2003. But before that, it was a book written by Gregory Maguire. He's a best-selling novelist who's written dozens of books for adults and children, and he's out with a new book called Elphie. So what happened to our dear Ephaba before she arrives at Shiz University? Elphie is a coming-of-age story of the future Wicked Witch of the West, and I'm so happy to have Gregory joining us today, so thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Whitney. It's a real pleasure to go from one side of the country to the other to be able to chat about Elphie via this magic broom.
Right? Gotta love Zoom. That is our version of
Really.
magic these days, isn't it?
Zoom is the sound that a broom makes when it goes overhead.
Yes.
Zoom.
Yes. And here we are. I'm in Phoenix. You're in Boston.
Right.
And let's talk a little bit about Elphie and how you're feeling about its release.
Well, I am delighted about it. I had thought a couple of years ago that perhaps I'd written my last novel. I've been a novelist for over 45 years and almost done a novel a year. Not quite, because I did a lot of picture books and criticism and other kinds of things as well. But almost one publication a year since I was in my mid-20s. But there was something about the life story of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, uh, that did not seem entirely complete to me when I published Wicked 30 years ago this year.
Wow.
30 years ago this year. In fact, I submitted the manuscript to my agent and my editor said, I'll take it, I love it, I want it, but not this much of it. So it's too long, and we need to get readers to the chapters where Elphaba and Galinda finally meet each other. So snip out some of the first bit and let us move a little faster towards Shiz. I did. I took out 2 or 3 very short scenes, not more than a page each, from the original draft, and I left little vignettes about Elphaba as a child on the cutting room floor. But you know what? Sometimes when you drop something on the floor, it takes root anyway. And so 30 years later, I looked back and I saw, oh, gee, there's fruit and flower and growth and organic development in those little clippings. So I'm going to plant them again and see what I come up with.
And this brings us again to Elphie's childhood. So when she was a very young girl through her teenage years, tell readers what they can expect when they pick up Elphie.
You can expect to understand a little better how a child who was born really with a kind of uh, disorganized upbringing, let's call it that to be polite. I wouldn't say she was abused, but she was certainly neglected. You seem to leap in memory from a very young Elphaba to the moment she arrives at Shiz University, perfectly capable of doing academic work and actually rising to the top academically. How does she get that way? Where did she get her capacity to be A, smart, and B, to have honed her skills so that she could thrive in an academic environment? That's part of what Elphie says, because there's a lot more to her story than we have yet seen.
Mhm. I just finished Elphie this morning, actually, and this is your 5th book set in Oz. What is it like for you to return to that mindset of writing as Elphaba and writing in this space?
The funny thing is, it's so much easier than I expected. Do you know there's a function on your computer? You probably know about it. I think it's called Google Earth,
Hmm.
where you type in the name of a former romantic interest, let's say, or not the name, but the address. Oh, yeah, it was 517 Prairie View Road. You can type in 517 Prairie View Road, and Google Earth will actually show you a photograph from above of what the roof of 517 Prairie View Road actually looks like. You can scrutinize it to see if someone has climbed up on that roof with a pan of white paint and painted the letters, "Come back, all is forgiven," on the roof. But the fact is, I feel that my imagination is a little bit like Google Earth. All I have to do is adjust the focal depth and say, oh, I need to know more about this. What is there? And immediately I seem to be able to draw things into focus and to bring them back.
And speaking of the writing process, where do you do your writing? Do you have a spot? Do you have multiple spots in your home? Do you go to a coffee shop? What does that process look like?
You're very smart. You know how writers work. Well, behind me, you see, I'm not sure if this is actually being
Yeah.
aired for visuals. Behind me, you see my office in my home. It's a purpose-built place. It has marble floors that I helped lay myself. It has beautiful 18th century and 19th century furniture. Of course, I don't work here. Of course, like every other person in the world, I take my computer and I go to a place where I can grab a cup of coffee and sit in a public place quietly and anonymously and do my work outside of the storm of family affection and strife and crisis and trife.
You need some quiet time, some quiet space. And even when you're out at a coffee shop in a public space, you still feel like you feel like you're alone. Do people ever ask you like what you're working on or recognize you or anything like that?
I am generally recognized in my neighborhood, which is nice, and people generally leave me alone, as they should. But I'm working, nobody likes to interrupt somebody who's clearly working, so
Yeah.
I don't go up to somebody else who's on a laptop
Yeah.
and say, "Oh, what are you working
Yeah,
on?"
that's true. That's very true. I guess that's just like the nosy journalist in me, like sitting there
Yeah.
like, what is everybody working on?
Well, I have those nosy,
Yeah.
instincts as well,
Yeah.
but I take the question and I channel them into my, imagination, and I decide what they're working
Yeah.
on. Oh, they're writing another crackpot manifesto about the fact that all our tomatoes taste rubbery. I wonder when that's gonna be published, and what's gonna be the result of that when that hits the New Yorker.
So let's talk a little about Elphaba. She's, misunderstood, prickly, an outsider who has a very strong moral compass. She always fights for what's right. She's a champion for animals. In what ways do you personally relate to Elpha? Do you see yourself in this character?
Well, sometimes I say to myself, Elphaba is me if I were better at being me. She's smarter than I am, and I think I have some of her same instincts of solidarity, let's say, with the distressed and the underrepresented. But I don't have her strength of voice, either her singing voice or her command of courage to be able to stand up in a public forum and declare what she believes to be true. My public forum is the very quiet hiss of a turning page in a novel. That's where I speak. I whisper into a book, and somebody else will get it and listen to it, and they will hear me there. But I don't have Elphaba's ability to be in public. That's why I've never run for public office, and that's why I'm not a regular on National Public Radio.
In the
I'm a
book,
quiet guy.
yeah, in the book Elphie, there's a lot of firsts, which was so fascinating to see her. She encounters animals for the first time, talking animals. And this is sort of where she develops that really strong connection to them. Why was this such an important part of Elphaba's story?
Well, it's very interesting. Very often, Whitney, people ask me, what did the writers and composers of the musical Wicked bring to your story that you wish you had thought yourself? And there is one piece in the it's in the play, in the stage play, and it's even expanded a little bit in the first half hour of the movie. And that's in the character, you know her well, of Dulcibert, the nanny in the story who is a bear in the movie, and that right away suggests that Elphaba, as an infant cradled in the shaggy, cozy, sort of carpet-like furry arms of a bear, would have sympathy for talking animals because that was her mother in many ways, her caregiver anyway. I didn't think of that. And while there's a nanny in my books, she is not a bear. She is a kind of crotchety old lady stolen out of the 1980s version of Brideshead Revisited. Mona Washburn played her as the nanny in the attic of the Brideshead family. And I loved that idea that the nanny could have been an animal. I wish I'd thought of that. That was a great idea that Winnie Holtzman and Stephen Schwartz had. I'm not sure which of them had it. So I thought that would have made understandable where her sympathies came from if I'd thought of that idea. But I didn't present Elphaba or talking animals until the second section of Wicked when she gets to Shiz. So I thought, well, I'm gonna borrow that. There's got to be a reason Elphaba has this sympathy, and I haven't presented it in the pages of Wicked. So I'm going to do this. And of course, she has to have met animals in childhood about whom she cared and maybe toward whom she felt responsible.
Mhm. Let's talk a little bit also about Elphie's relationship with Nessa Rose, particularly in the early years, which we see in this book, and see how that changes over the years.
Well, that was one of the main reasons I wanted. Well, there were two or three main reasons I wanted to write this book. And one of them was to re-examine her relationships in childhood with the three important people in her family, her sister, her father, and her mother. I don't give her father, her mother completely short shrift in the original novel, Wicked, but her mother dies when Elphaba's pretty young, so she doesn't have too many scenes. And what I do say about her in Wicked is she's kind of scandalous, or as the movie would call it, scandalocious. Um, she's a bit too fond of preening in public and exposing her her beauty and her virtues to the public street, let's say. So I wanted to look at her a little bit more, figure out where she had come from and why she was so distractible, and whether or not she had the maternal instincts, as hard as they might be to sum it up, whether she actually had them at all. And I discovered in the opening quarter of Elphie that I could see that while she's flawed, as indeed everybody in my writing always is, while she's flawed, she's not irredeemable. And she does have motherly feelings toward Elphaba, even though she is not good at knowing how to use them or express them.
Mhm.
So I love doing that. And the same thing for Nessa Rose. I'll tell you, Whitney, when I first got the idea of doing this book, I was in England. And I finally came to the moment where I thought, okay, Gregory, it's time to, you know, uh, pick up that broom and wield it. Uh, and I thought, okay, what do we know? What do we know about these characters? What do we know about the Wicked Witch of the West? One thing I thought is, well, we know she has a sister, but the only thing we know about the sister is that she has ankles and feet. That's all. We don't see anything more about her. Any other way that she looked or was has been obliterated by Dorothy's house. So it's fair game for me. I could say she had three heads. I could say she had, I could say she was as big as a house because a house fell on her, she's gone. And that's what made me realize she might be compromised in some way about which it wouldn't have been spoken once she was dead, but that was nonetheless true. And that's how I presented Nessa Rose to the world. I wanted Elphie to have a complicated relationship with Nessa Rose that was as real as the relationship of any pair of siblings in the world, which is that sometimes you love them and sometimes you don't. And the novel opens on a day when Elphie, at the age of only 3 or 4, has just about had it with this squalling little piece of useless infancy and decides to do something about it.
Speaking of sort of the differences between the musical and the movie and your book, the book that came out in the '90s, there because they are very different. The book, and then as I mentioned, the musical and the movie. But what are some of the same themes that you were happy to see come out in both the musical and the movie, and the same messages?
Well, I feel very strongly that the most important things about the novel are preserved intact in the musical play and in the musical movie. One of them is about the fact that we are pulled simultaneously to be feisty, one-off individuals. One-off is that British phrase of, there ain't anybody like you, you're a one-off. We are called simultaneously to be one-off individuals, and at the same time, we are called to be citizens, which means to be collaborative and to live in society with those we like and those we don't like. We all feel, I think, we all feel a little bit of push and pull about that. We want to be good neighbors, good citizens, and we also want nobody to tell us what to do. They happen at the same time. Uh, so I think that what the musical preserved is that very natural emotion in Elphie, in Elphaba, to want to be accepted by her peers, and at the same time, when push came to shove, to realize she would have to do without their acceptance if she was going to be able to live with herself. And sometimes life calls us to make that kind of very rough choice. And I think the book presented that, and I think the musical and the movie very much capture that. When Elphaba at the top of the tower in the Emerald City says goodbye to Galinda and puts herself in self-exile, that's a huge, you would almost call it a curse she's putting herself into it. She's depriving herself of everything that's given her strength up until then, except her moral belief that this is wrong. And from now on, that has to be the strength that she has to work with.
In the book Elphie, you dedicate the book to Idina Menzel, Cynthia Erivo, and all of the Elphabas past and the Elphabas to come. What has it been like for you to see these incredibly talented women portray Elphaba?
Sometimes people say, I'm going to answer your question, like around the corner. Sometimes people say, well, A, you're a man. What gives you the right to think you can write about strong women? Where's your license? Show us your license. Well, I was raised by a strong woman who was not my birth mother. I was also taught for 13 years by nuns, none of whom were abusive or the caricature of the mean cross nun. In fact, almost all of them encouraged me in my creativity, gave me a safe place to be, and encouraged me forward. So when the time came for Elphaba to appear on the stage and sing, and it was Idina Menzel doing the singing, when she first walks out onto the stage through the round doors at the back of the stage, and the audience greets her, and she's dressed in black. She is basically a young nun. She's every sister of the Holy Heart that ever taught me, and she has all the strength and passion and conviction of the strongest women that I knew in childhood. She represents them. The interesting thing, Whitney, and I think this is sort of what you were getting at, is that in person, Idina Menzel as an actress, as a singer, as a creator and a songwriter, as a play director and producer. I think she's a producer, not director. And Cynthia Erivo, too. Both have in their own persons the same sort of strengths as the character they're playing. That to me is like, I don't know, it's a double, it's one acetate film over another, and the combination of these strong women playing a strong character, it just comes right into your face and kind of makes you explode with joy.
What has it been like for you since the movie was released to see a whole new generation of folks falling in love with Wicked and Elphaba?
Uh, I have a lot of friends who are writers, and we who have gone into this line of work as our life's passion, and sometimes as the way that we, rub two nickels together, do not expect to enter the public eye. We are a quiet breed. We are self-appointed hermits. We rarely get together except in conferences. And when we do, sometimes we go to the bar, but most of us just go to the hall outside the elevator and stand there and talk for a long time. We're very, I wouldn't say we're socially inept, but we don't crave the limelight. That's really what I'm trying to say. So once in a while, though, something happens and the limelight is foisted upon us. You know, the it is not something that I wanted. You know, I actually almost went into religious life at one point, and that was partly because I wanted to step aside from the noise of the world and to be quiet in my own head and to see what I could hear in my creative imagination, my spiritual imagination. But with Wicked, oh my God, with Wicked, 23 years on Broadway, the fourth longest running play in Broadway history, almost 20 years on the London stage in the West End, billions, and I mean that not hyperbolically, but actually billions of dollars brought in around the world from the play and before too long from the movie as well. It has thrust me into a public identity for which I don't think I'm adequately beautiful or prepared, but which I try to embrace with a good nature anyway. People write to me all the time, Whitney. I get letters every day of people who fall over themselves in gratitude for my having brought the character of Elphaba into the world. I think accidentally I've sort of tweaked a little bit of the genome of popular culture. I took my tweezers and I went in and I just twisted, I torqued the story of the Wizard of Oz, which is part of our national heritage. It's part of our identity. Over the Rainbow is our second national anthem. Some days I think it should be the first. But I have gone in there like a surgeon and I've used my little tools and I've tweaked the story in a way that allows us to see it differently. And I think for right now, for this generation, for the people who write to me, it's been welcome and it's made me uncomfortably prominent.
Well, personally, I think that you're beautiful and the limelight looks very good on you.
Well, thank you. Well, limelight is actually white light, I think, because I think it refers to lime wash.
Yeah.
But I like to think of it as lime color.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or avocado light.
Yeah. So you have people writing to you, and what is it about Elphie that really speaks to them?
Well, Elphie is a little bit like opening a file cabinet that you inherited from your parents and going to the bottom drawer and finding somebody's journal, somebody you've admired but not known as much about as you wanted. Elphie is a letter from the past, and it reveals and exhumes and illuminates aspects of Elphaba's character that we've come to love without really knowing how they developed.
Mhm. What do you hope people take away from the book Elphie as it's out now?
I think that all of my books have a similar deep tissue kind of intention. And actually, I think this is true of most fiction, is why we have fiction, is why we have the novel as an art form. And that is a renewed caution for all of us. And I'm saying myself too, I'm very much including me at the apex of this triangle crowd of all of us, starting with me, to take some more time before rushing to judgment about people with whom we disagree. People whose behavior we can't understand, people whose thinking we can't follow. It is very easy to write people off. And as you may know, Whitney, I don't know if you do know this, it's very easy to be written off too. It's not a comfortable feeling to be written off. And therefore, every novel we ever read in life uh, is a reminder that everybody's life is in itself novel. It's new. It hasn't happened to anybody else before, and it's not going to happen to anybody else again. That means we have I think I call it a moral obligation. And I do think it's a moral obligation. We have a moral obligation to slow down and shut up and let them talk and listen. We don't have to agree, but we have to slow ourselves down to keep our arms from picking up stones or javelins or slingshots or nukes and going to war.
What has it been like for you to now also hear from people who are picking up Wicked for the first time decades after it was initially published?
Well, I think I'll turn that question a little bit on its side too, because what I'm hearing is that there is half a generation, at least, if not a whole generation now, for whom the 1939 film starring Margaret Hamilton and some little child star wannabe, run of the mill somebody, uh, or who didn't ever read the L. Frank Baum novel published 125 years ago. There are people who only know the story of The Wizard of Oz from Wicked.
Oh,
They're going back to things that probably you grew up with and I grew up with, the annual airing of The Wizard of
yeah.
Oz.
Hmm.
They're going back to that and saying, "What? You know, she's not that bad. What are you doing? Stop that, you pretty little idiot. Stop."
What kind of influence did the Wizard of Oz movie have on you when you was a kid? Do you still remember watching it for the first time?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Whitney, I grew up in a family that was financially up against it a little bit. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich. And my parents were very strict too. So they would rarely let us watch more than a half an hour of TV every couple of days. We were required to read. We wanted to read too, which was good because we're all writers and we all love it. And I still do. But once a year, they would relent and let us watch the annual broadcast of The Wizard of Oz. And so, therefore, it was such a red letter day for our family. Everybody, all nine of us gathered in the living room and watched it once a year at the same time every year. And it became part of like I'd like to think it was like the liturgical calendar. There was Christmas, there was Easter, there was the Wizard of Oz. It was just one of those things about life that recurs and recurs and recurs. Fourth of July, Halloween, the Wizard of Oz. It just was in there as a part of the character of childhood, in a sense. And so I loved it. And after I saw it, and all my brothers and sisters saw it, and all the kids on the block saw it, I would gather everybody in the backyard and impose my will upon them and say, "Okay, guys, we're going to play The Wizard of Oz. We're going to go in the backyard and I'll direct it. The lilac tree can be the hurricane, the tornado, I mean, and the back porch can be where Dorothy's house lands in Oz, and the witch's castle can be over in that corner. And you can be this one, you can be that one, I'll be this one. Let's go. Places, people, let's go." And I would do that. So, in a sense, I started playing with the found material of the story by the time I was about 6 or 7. It really got into my imagination, and I had to mess with it. Did you ever put a lump of Play Doh on a low lying table and bring a 3-year-old into the room and not see them go straight at it to try to shape it into something, to try, at the very least, to make a snake or a pancake or little balls? That's what raw material is to a creative person. You just have to get your hands dirty and shape it.
So obviously the Wizard of Oz the movie had a big impact on you watching it when you were a kid, and then when Wicked the movie was being made, I know you got to visit the set. I mean, what was it like being on a movie set and seeing this world come to life?
Well, what the various reports that have come out of Hollywood and London are accurate. That set was fully built. I mean, I didn't see every part of it. I didn't see the outdoor parts because when I was there, they were filming on sound stages. But I think I saw 7 different sound stages. I saw Madame Morrible's bedroom. I saw the Ozdos Ballroom. I saw the forest. And one thing after another. It was a little bit like, I don't know, it's like falling asleep in your dream and finding your dream is more real than your waking life. That happens to me fairly often, but this was actually, I wasn't asleep here. It was pretty shocking and so beautiful. An interesting thing. Let's take the scene of Madame Marable's study, where there's only two camera angles used in that study, I believe. There's an overhead one looking at Elphaba as she's straining, and there's one on the side looking at her hands and at Madame Marable's face. That was a fully built set. That set was 360 degrees in the round, so that the director, John M. Chu, if he chose, could swing the camera around and take it from this angle, and the set would be there. We didn't actually see anything more than about a third of the set, but it was all built all the way around. And you know what? I walked up to Madame Marable's desk, and I forget what if I opened a drawer in her desk or something. It was filled with magic items. I mean, she doesn't open the drawer
Yeah.
in the story. I went over to the bookcase. Those were not paint. Those books weren't painted on the set. They were actual books,
Wow.
and they weren't, Gone with the Wind and Emerson's second series of essays. They were books with titles that would be appropriate to a headmistress of sorcery. Every detail was thought out and perfected to the nth degree, as they say. The azillionth degree
Yeah.
is how I call
That's incredible. I'm going to go back and watch that scene now to look for
it. Yeah,
those little tiny details because watching it, and
absolutely.
I feel like every time you watch it, you probably notice something different, or when you were there, you noticed something different, I'm sure.
It's absolutely true. I
Yeah.
did indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gregory, is there anything else you want to add that I haven't asked that you think is important if readers are just diving into the world you've created, whether it's through Elphie or whether they're going back to read the initial Wicked book?
Well, I will say this, and this is no shock. This often is the case when popular entertainments are an outgrowth of a literary work. And that is that, as you know, Whitney, my writing, both in Elphie and in Wicked, is not undemanding. I think Elphie is easy to read because it's shorter and the chapters are shorter, and it's about childhood, which is something about which we all have a firm and I hope fond memories, or at least some fond memories. Nonetheless, a novel does different things than a popular entertainment on the stage or in the screen. It gives you the chance to lower yourself in as if into a very hot therapeutic bath. And my instruction for myself, especially in a novel where I think I'm not, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this. I'm reading Proust. How do I get into Proust? I mean, what you do is you lower yourself very slowly into the bath and let its temperature and let the grade and quality of the surround come to you, and you will get more out of it. This sounds very dangerous. It sounds like I'm saying, oh, it's very hard, very complicated. It's too hot a bath for me. No, I don't mean that. I just mean we owe to the writers of our fiction the chance for them to make their best effort. And that means, just like I said earlier about the people we don't understand, means being patient, means giving them a chance to talk, means being quiet and not putting our own expectations out there first, but saying, okay, Elphie, what do you have to say to me? I'm listening.
I love that. And I just love Elphie. She's like one of my favorite characters that I've ever read. And I am probably going to be one of those people writing you letters about how much I love her as a character. So if you see one,
I will write back to you.
okay, if you see one from Phoenix, that was me. And then what will the next, I mean, couple months look like for you? You'll be talking about Elphie. Will you be doing any more surrounding part 2 of the film? And then any other written works? I mean, you mentioned this could potentially be your last one, at least for now.
Well, I do have a couple of projects on the table. I call them my wisps. I have wisps of idea. And somebody said to me once, "Well, what do you mean by a wisp? What is a wisp?" And a wisp is an acronym for a work in slow progress. WISP. I have two wisps floating around, eddying around on the top of my desk, and I'm not going to talk about them yet because I don't know whether they're going to cohere to become a whirlwind that I can bring out into the world, but I'm hopeful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Gregory. We really appreciate it.
Oh,
I'm so happy to read about Elphie's childhood. So Elphie is out now. And do you think people can read this as like a standalone? Like it's okay to read this before the other Oz books? You think that would? Okay.
absolutely. I mean, it helps if you know a little bit about
Hmm.
Oz, it
Yeah.
helps. But I think right from the first page, I mentioned that Elfie is a green child.
Hmm.
She's just sitting on a blanket in kind of a dangerous backwater war zone, if you will.
Hmm.
And there she is, and you just sit down on the blanket next to her and see what happens next.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Whitney.
you.
Thanks to your staff behind the cameras
Yes,
too
thank you.
for
That's Lorraine.
here.
She's in charge of all
Yeah.
the sound and everything. So, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Of
Thank you, Lorraine.
course.